Whenever you read and write, you are always expressing yourself. This is what my grandmother always told me after being forced to go to the library. Throughout my years, there have been two people who have helped me with my literacy. My sister showed me by writing about the way I felt about things, and my grandmother showed me by leading me to read books that had to do with whatever it was I was concerned with. When I was in elementary school, I hated to open a book that did not have an interesting cover. I always wanted to read a book that had something to do with what I enjoyed doing myself. There were a couple of things that made me slower reader than most of the other kids in class, which was having trouble with just a couple of words. When I started to read and write at school, I never could really show how good of a reader I was because of my small reading difficulties. I could never get words that started with the letter S and R, therefore I was discouraged in my reading. Even after having help with my S and R's, I still never wanted to read in front of the class because I felt like the other kids were just waiting on me to mess up. Although I could not read some of the words in my writing, there were better words that I could understand. Wherever we had a writing assignment in class, I would be the first person to stand up to read mine. Lance, I think you have the writing part down. Now let's work on your reading. My grandmother always told me this whenever I made a good grade in writing because she knew that I could do just as good in reading if I would just try a little harder. The one thing that got me to read the book my grandmother pointed out to me was the big buck on the front cover. My grandmother knew that I loved to hunt, so she thought this book would be a good one for me to start with. The book was about a little boy going on to get his first big buck with his dad. The book talked about the little boy not being a very good shooter with a bow, so he would always shoot his rifle. But this hunt, he was going to give hunting with the bow a chance, even if he wasn't good at it. I asked my grandmother if she thought I could do the same, and she said that I could. I began to think that even though I was not good at reading some words, I could still give reading a chance. My sister loved to write. She told me that if I expressed myself in my writings, then I could really have some good creations. My sister always helped me with my writing homework. I was a good writer to begin with, I just never could find any good topics to write about. She always told me that if I wanted to be a good writer, then I had to express what I wanted to talk about. My sister would always give me ideas on homework, and would always give me guidance if I messed up. My 8th grade teacher, Coach Eastler, would always make us come in and read for 15 minutes, and then write about how the book or magazine could relate to our own personal life. I never will forget when I read this one magazine about a professional wrestler getting disqualified at a big tournament. I remembered what my sister had mentioned to me out of the blue about expressing myself in each of my writings. So I began to tell my story about getting disqualified at the state meet in wrestling. The next day, my teacher stood up in class and read what I had written, then said, "I felt like I was the one who got disqualified after reading your paper. Nice job." I realized that after expressing myself, I had done exactly what my sister had reminded me to do. Looking back on all of the years of reading and writing, I really made progress. I got made fun of because of my letters, but now I can read anything. Now almost anything I read or write, I look back on all the things that my grandmother and sister pushed me to do to become the reader and writer I am today. One good thing I got from reading the book about the boy shooting his first buck was even if you're not good at something, you can still give it a try and accomplish your goal. My lessons learned on reading and writing at a younger age still helps me with motivation in my literacy today. I will keep my grandmother and sister in mind of all my readings and writings.